Imagine doing your weekly shop when a half-naked, screaming teenager runs into the supermarket. What happened next traumatized everyone. It was the 10th of November 1986 when a 17-year-old girl raced into a supermarket in Willagee near Perth, Australia. And just the look of absolute terror on her face and the shrill scream that came out of her mouth was enough to stop everyone in their tracks. She was Katie Moir, and what she had to say was traumatizing. Now, the police came and took the girl away to find out what the hell was going on. She led them to a nearby home, 3 Morehouse Street. Inside, Kate had actually left little notes and personal items. She'd done this because she was convinced she was going to be murdered. She truly believed that she was going to die inside that house, and she was leaving clues for the police. Now, the owners of that home were married couple David and Catherine Burney, a lovely, pleasant couple from the area, or so people thought. David had actually been cruel and violent since day dot, since he was a child. He'd grown up in a very violent household, and honestly, that just kind of felt like the norm. So by the time he was 15, he'd committed his first known SA. This was of a landlady in a boarding house. He also apparently SA'd his own brother. Now, when he was young, he met this girl called Catherine, and they were absolutely inseparable at the time. They couldn't get enough of each other, and they ended up being literally partners in crime. They were breaking into people's houses, robbing people, but they ended up losing contact for a while after Catherine landed herself in prison at just 20. She then basically married this other guy called Donald and had loads of kids with him. I believe they had around 7 children. They were definitely busy. But David and Catherine ended up kind of falling back into each other's arms. They reunited in the 80s, and she just completely abandoned her massive family and just chucked Donald. And things were about to get very, very dark. Let me tell you, Donald had a lucky escape. They shared the most sick, deprived, dark fantasies you could imagine and decided to act on them. In early October 1986, they abducted a young student, Mary Nelson. Now, this poor girl was lured to their house under the pretense of like, we've heard that you need some new tires for your car. We've got some tires that you can have for very cheap. When she knocked on the door, David stood there with a knife. The couple overpowered her, chained her up, and repeatedly AR'd her. I don't know what you guys think, but personally, I actually think that this is worse than even just killing her there and then. They bundled her into their car, drove her, terrified, to Woodlands, SA'd her again, and then murdered her. But they weren't going to stop there. They had plans to do this again. 2 weeks later, they came across a 15-year-old girl hitchhiking. This was Susanna Candy. She was the most lovely, sweet girl that you could imagine, and she just needed a lift from Claremont. So she was relieved when she saw a friendly-looking couple pull alongside her. But after hopping into their car, she soon realized she'd made a fatal mistake. It was bound and gagged and driven to their home, terrified. And again, I don't know what you think, but this feels more cruel to me. They made her ring her own mum and be like, hey mum, I'm just staying at a friend's house, like, no need to worry about me. Basically to make sure that nobody was going to report her missing. Then she was put through hell. They kept her there for days and days, R-ing her, torturing her. It was a living nightmare, until eventually she met the same fate as Mary and was buried next to her. But again, they weren't done. They were going to snatch another woman. This was Noeline Patterson, and they snatched her again from by the highway, and again she was forced to ring her family to prevent any kind of panic. Just think how horrific those families must have felt when they eventually discovered the truth. The whole conversation was a lie. But Noeline was actually very smart. She was like, oh, do you know what? I'm going to actually gain David's trust and try and build some kind of relationship with him so that hopefully he sets me free. And I've seen that work a lot. But this didn't exactly go the way that she'd planned, because by gaining David's trust and forming a relationship with him, she actually really pissed off Catherine. And in the end, the story ended the same way as the other victims did, being buried in the forest. It only took days for them to take another victim. This time it was Denise Brown. She was just, again, waiting for a lift by the side of the road when she was snatched. But this death was even more barbaric than the others. It felt like they were just trying to go further and further to satisfy their sick fantasies. Denise was assaulted repeatedly and then had her throat slit. But when they buried her, they realized that she was actually still alive. She was clawing at the dirt and gasping for air, desperately trying to cling on to life. So David grabbed an axe, and you can probably imagine how it ended. Infuriatingly, with all these girls vanishing, the police seemed to kind of be shrugging their shoulders. Kate would end up making a brave break for freedom one night after she got captured herself. And it all started with a knock at the door. So Kate had been captured by these monsters, chained up in the house repeatedly hard, just exactly the same as all of the other girls before her had. And she was quite clearly on borrowed time. I mean, this wasn't going to end well. And then there was a knock at the door. It was actually a substance dealer. Like, whoever thought that a substance dealer in this situation was actually going to kind of inadvertently save someone? Catherine heard the door, panicked, and shoved Kate into a room to prevent her from being seen, obviously. So Kate saw her opportunity and absolutely legged it out of the window. She was like, I don't have time to waste. I can see an opportunity when one presents itself. She ran screaming into the supermarket, and that's how this all came crashing down for this couple. Finally, their sick reign of terror was over, and they admitted their crimes to the police. They actually showed them to the burial sites, and they were very, very callous about it. Catherine even spat on one of the graves. They both actually got 4 life sentences, and when David was escorted past the crowds who were hurling abuse at him, rightly so, he turned and blew them a kiss. How gross. But he did actually end up unaliving himself in a cell in 2005.